welcome back in part 8 of PlayStation. Anyways, let's continue talking about this topic.
Released in Japan on December 17, 2011, and North America on February 22, 2012, the PlayStation Vita was previously code-named Next Generation Portable (NGP).
It was officially unveiled by Sony on January 27, 2011, at the PlayStation Meeting 2011.
The original model of the handheld, the TCH-1000 series, features a 5-inch OLED touchscreen, 2 analog sticks, a rear touchpad, 6-axis motion sensing, and a 4-core ARM Cortex-A9 MP core processor. The new TCH-2000 series system is a lighter redesign of the device that was announced at the SCEJA press conference in September 2013 prior to the Tokyo Game Show.
This model is 20% thinner and 15% lighter compared to the original model, has an additional hour of battery life. An LCD instead of OLED, includes a micro USB Type-B port, 1 GB of internal storage memory.
It was released in Japan on October 10, 2015, in 6 colors: white, black, pink, yellow, blue, and olive green, and in North America on May 6, 2014. The Vita was discontinued in March 2019.
SIE President Jim Ryan said that while the Vita was a great device, they have moved away from portable consoles. Clearly it's a business that we're no longer in now.
The PlayStation Vita, PS Vita, is a handheld game console developed and marketed by Sony Computer Entertainment.
It was first released in Japan on December 17, 2011, then in other international territories on February 22, 2012, and was produced until discontinuation on March 1, 2019.
The console is the successor to the PlayStation Portable, PSP, and a part of the PlayStation brand of gaming devices. As part of the 8th generation of video game consoles, it primarily competed with a Nintendo 3DS. The original model of the handheld includes a 5-inch, 130mm OLED multi-touch capacitive touchscreen, a rear touchpad, 2 analog joysticks, and front and shoulder push-button input, and supports Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as standard, while a variant model was sold with an additional 3G modem.
The Vita features a quad-core ARM Cortex-A9 MP core CPU and a quad-core SGX 543 MP GPU.
The PS Vita 2000 series, a revised version of the system, was released across 2013 and 2014.
It has all of the same features, with a slightly smaller size, extended battery life, and an LCD panel instead of an OLED.
Sony released the PlayStation TV, a short-lived, repurposed version of the Vita that uses a television screen like a home video game console, discontinued at the end of 2015. The Vita's design was intended to melt the experience of big-budget, dedicated video game platforms with an up-and-coming trend of mobile gaming as seen on smartphones and tablets.
However, in the year after the device's successful launch, sales of the hardware and its bigger-budget games stalled, threatening to end its lifespan.
A concentrated effort to attract smaller independent developers in the West, combined with strong support from mid-level Japanese companies, helped keep the platform afloat.
Though this led to less diversity in its game library, it strengthened support in JRPGs, visual novels, and Western development games.
This built moderate sales in Japan and a smaller yet passionate user base in the West.
Though Sony has not released exact sales figures, estimates are around 15 to 16 million units.
In the platform's later years, Sony promoted the PlayStation Vita's ability to work in conjunction with its other gaming products, such as remote play and PlayStation 4 games, similar to the Wii U's function of off-TV play.
The platform stalled in 2017 upon the release of the Nintendo Switch and was completely discontinued in 2019.
The system is regarded as a commercial failure in the video game industry and was significantly outsold by the Nintendo 3DS.
No direct successor was released by Sony, though in 2023, a similar remote play accessory, the PlayStation Portal, was released for the PlayStation 5.
After the success of Nintendo's Game Boy family of handheld game consoles throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, with little market competition and Sony's massive success with its PlayStation and PlayStation 2 home video game consoles around the same time, Sony entered the handheld market as well.
In 2004, it released the PlayStation Portable, PSP, to compete with the Nintendo DS as part of the 7th generation of video game consoles.
After a slow start in the worldwide market, it was invigorated in Japan with multiple releases in the Monster Hunter series.
With the series being less popular in Western regions, it failed to revive the platform in the same way.
The PSP ended up being a mixed result for the company.
It was seen as a success in that it was the only handheld video game platform that had ever significantly competed with Nintendo for market share, with almost 80 million units sold in its lifespan, roughly the same amount as Nintendo's Game Boy Advance had during the 6th generation of video game consoles.
This is only a little more than half of the sales of its actual market competitor, the DS, which was more than 150 million units by the end of 2011. Rumors of the successor to the PSP came as early as July 2009, when Eurogamer reported that Sony was working on such a device, which would utilize the power of the RSGX 543MP processor and perform at a level similar to the original Xbox.
Through mid-2010, websites continued to run stories about accounts of the existence of a PSP2.
Reports arose during the Tokyo Game Show that the device was unveiled internally during a private meeting during mid-September held at Sony Computer Entertainment's headquarters in Aoyama, Tokyo.
Shortly after, reports of development kits for the handheld had reportedly already been shipped to numerous video game developers, including both first-party and third-party developers, to start making games for the device, a report later confirmed by Mortal Kombat executive producer Sean Hemerick.
By November, Senior Vice President of Electronic Arts, Patrick Soderlund, confirmed that he had seen that the PlayStation Portable successor existed, but could not confirm details.
In the same month, VG247 released pictures of an early prototype version showing a PSP Go-like slide screen design along with 2 analog sticks, 2 cameras and a microphone, though the report mentioned that overheating issues have since caused them to move away from the design in favor of a model more similar to the original PlayStation Portable device.
Throughout 2010, Sony would not confirm these reports of a PSP successor but would make comments regarding making future hardware.
Shuhei Yoshida, president of SCE Worldwide Studios, revealed that his studio, despite usually being more involved with software, had a continued role in future hardware development at the time.
In December, Sony Computer Entertainment CEO Kazuo Hirate stated that Sony aimed to appeal to a wide demographic of people by using multiple input methods on future hardware. Buttons and joysticks for traditional handheld game system users, and touchscreens for smartphone users.
The device was officially announced by Sony on January 27, 2011, at their PlayStation meeting press conference held by the company in Japan.
The system, only known by its codename Next Generation Portable (NGP), was announced to be a handheld gaming device that aimed for PlayStation 3 quality visuals, which was later clarified to not be taken at a literal level because, according to David Coombs, platform research manager at Sony Computer Entertainment America, well, it's not going to run at 2 GHz like the PS3 because the battery would last 5 minutes and it would probably set fire to your pants.
Its power was later described by Sony engineers as about halfway between the PSP and PS3.
As rumors had suggested, the device was designed to present the best of both worlds, between mobile and handheld gaming, including a 5-inch OLED touchscreen, a rear touchpad coupled with physical buttons and dual analog sticks.
Sony also revealed that the device would be using a mix of retail and digital distribution of games.
Further details were announced at Game Developers Conference 2011, including that Sony would be dropping the PSP's UMD disc format in favor of small game cartridges of 2 GB or 4 GB size variants, along with 2 cameras, facial detection, head detection and tracking capabilities. On June 6, 2011, at E3 2011, Sony announced that the device's official name would be the PlayStation Vita, with the word Vita being Latin for life.
Mark Cerny was the lead architect of the device.
Despite reports of the 2011 earthquakes in Japan delaying the release of the device, Sony reconfirmed that it was on track for a late 2011 release in Japan and a February 2012 release date for other major regions of the world.
The release date was later narrowed down to a December 17, 2011 release in Japan and the February 22, 2012 release date for America and Europe. Although a limited edition was released a week earlier in North America on February 15, 2012, which included the 3G/Wi-Fi model of the device, the game Little Deviants, a limited edition carry case, and the 4 GB memory card.
The Vita launched with 26 titles in Japan, with Sony announcing that there were over 100 titles in development prior to the system's release overall.
The Vita launched in the West with 25 titles, including original titles such as Uncharted, Golden Abyss and Wipeout 2048, and ports of games such as FIFA 12 and Rayman Origins.
The sales of the Vita started strong at launch, but then stalled and greatly underperformed.
The Vita had a strong launch in Japan, selling over 300,000 units in its first week of availability, though figures shortly afterwards shrunk, down 78% to under 73,000 sold in its second week, and then settled into about 12,000 sold per week in the following weeks.
Similarly, in the United States, the system debuted with 200,000 units sold in the first month, before slinking down into an amount of about 50,000 a month.
1.2 million units were reported as sold as of February 26, 2012, after it had launched in most regions.
The system continued to get high-profile games over the course of 2012, including Gravity Rush, Little Big Planet, PS Vita, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, Persona 4 Golden, Assassin's Creed 3, Liberation, and Call of Duty, Black Ops, Declassified.
Despite this, the system still only managed to sell 4 million units worldwide in its first 10 months on the market, and estimated by analysts to only be at 6 million units sold after 2 years of availability.
After 2012, Sony ceased releasing direct sales figures of the Vita, instead opting to release combined sales figures with it in the PSP.
Still, the system underperformed, while Sony projected selling 16 million units of combined Vita and PSP systems. It had to slash its forecast twice in the same year, down to 12 and then 10 million units sold.
With higher profile games not pushing the system sales enough, in 2012, big third-party companies like Ubisoft and Activision started reducing or eliminating support for the system, especially in the West.
Additionally, while the Monster Hunter series had significantly boosted the sales of the PSP, its absence instead hurt the Vita.
Its developer, Capcom, had decided to release Monster Hunter Tri and future Monster Hunter games exclusively on the Nintendo 3DS, where it would sell millions of copies for Sony's main competitor.
With support diminishing, Shahid Ahmed, Sony's director of strategic content, instead began a new approach to software through directly reaching out to and making accommodations for smaller, independent developers who had previously released games for mobile and PC platforms.
While not completely reversing the sales trends of the Vita, the lower costs of making or porting smaller budget games made it easier for developers to make a profit on the system's smaller user base. And in turn, increased consumer attention on the console, keeping the device afloat.
Fez, Spelunky, Hotline Miami, and Ollie all found success with releases on Vita.
Ahmed also maintained interest in the device by directly interacting with consumers on social media. The game Tales of Hearts R was localized into English only because it was number 1 in a survey of games desired on the platform.
Sony continued to support the system with games through 2013 as well, albeit less or so, with titles such as Killzone, Mercenary and Tearaway, along with a handful of other Western developed ports such as FIFA 13 and Rayman Legends.
While the focus on indie games kept the device afloat in the West, in Japan, no such measures were necessary as the Vita maintained moderate hardware sales.
While it was routinely outsold by its main competitor, the Nintendo 3DS, the Vita still managed to be one of the top consoles sold overall, partially due to Japan's preference towards handheld gaming.
Strong support by Japanese developers also helped, with companies such as Bandai Namco, Falcom, Koei Tecmo, 5PB, Compile Art, Spike Chunsoft, and that was releasing many games in the JRPG and visual novel genre to help keep a steady flow of mid-level releases coming to the system.
Additionally, big games such as Final Fantasy X-2 HD Remaster sold well and roughly in line with their home console counterparts.
The heavier support from Japan, in turn, also helped support the system in the West as well, with many games in the Atelier, Danganronpa, Persona, and Trail series localized into English on the Vita or made playable through the system's backward compatibility with digital PSP games. While the system managed to stay afloat as a minor success, other issues continued to persist, including the high price of the system in comparison to its main competitor, the Nintendo 3DS, and its sibling device, the PS3, the high price of its memory cards used for game and data storage, and the increasing popularity of smartphones and tablets.
In August 2013, Sony addressed the first two, dropping the price to $199 in North America and €199 in Europe, and cutting the suggested retail price of the memory cards as well.
The price cut also coincided with the release of a slight redesign of the system, the PS Vita 2000 model.
The redesign included making the system 20% thinner and 15% lighter, while adding 1 GB of internal storage and an extra hour of battery life.
However, the redesign did remove the OLED screen in favor of a cheaper LCD screen. Towards the end of 2015, around the launch of Sony's next video game device, the home video game console, the PlayStation 4, Sony began making comments in regard to the change in focus with the Vita.
Yoshida stated that Sony would be releasing fewer first-party games for the platform.
Sony Computer Entertainment's Product Planning and Platform Software Innovation Director Don Mesa stated that the economics simply don't work with a traditional process.
Sony addressed the economics of Vita game development issue with beginning on focusing on the fact that almost all PlayStation 4 games could be streamed and played through Vita through remote play.
Sony attempted to attach the device to the PS4 due to its extreme popularity. It took only a few weeks for the sales to surpass the sales of the Vita over the course of almost 2 years.
In July 2014, Yoshida stated that the company would focus on it less as a dedicated handheld video game console and more on its combination of uses, stating, "It's not about individual Vita games anymore. It's more about how Vita can have multiple uses with PS4 Remote Play, PS3 games with PS Now, and the dedicated games. The whole ecosystem with PS4 at the center, the Vita's a part of that."
Sony later announced that the Vita will have PlayStation VR integration in the form of a second screen as well.
Open beta trials for PlayStation Now functionality on the PS Vita began on October 14, 2014 in North America.
The PlayStation TV, released across late 2013 and 2014, also aimed to expand the system's user base by allowing for Vita games to be played on a television like a home console. Though the device was discontinued in the West by the end of 2015 and did not fare well in Japan's handheld-focused region either.
In November 2014, SCEA President Sean Layden suggested that the new approach was working on hardware level, stating that Vita sales had increased since the implementation of PS4 Remote Play. Though he and another Sony representative did not give specific figures.
Sony continued to make games for the device, though in smaller number than in past.
The last major Sony-developed title, Freedom Wars, still found success, selling over 188,000 copies in its first week of release in Japan.
The debut was the highest Sony game debut for the system, and the second highest, only to Namco Bandai's late 2015 release of God Eater 2 on the platform. In September 2015, Yoshida stated that Sony had no current plans for a Vita successor, stating that climate is not healthy for now because of the huge dominance of mobile gaming.
At E3 2015, he had stated that Sony would not be making any more big-budget games to the system. But by October, the comment had been revised that Sony would not be making any more games for it at all.
Reasons cited included the company focusing on supporting the PS4 and the fact that it felt that third-party Japanese developers and Western indie developers were sufficiently supporting the device.
In March 2016, Sony announced that instead it would be forming a new company, ForwardWorks, and be instead concentrating on bringing PlayStation-based games to mobile platforms like iOS and Android.
Despite Sony's focus on the PS4 and mobile for the future, the Vita still continued to receive substantial third-party company game support in the way of Japanese-style role-playing games and visual novels and Western-style and video games through 2017.
Minecraft in particular was successful for the platform, with it selling over 1.2 million physical copies in Japan alone as of September 2017.
The device is considered to have sold fairly well in Japan and still a crucial part of Sony's overall strategy in the region. While Sony has acknowledged that the device still has a very vocal and passionate user base in the West as well, with the company still encouraging third-party companies to create games for the device.
At the 2016 Game Developers Conference, research analyst firm EDAR estimated the sales of the Vita to be about 10 million units sold through the end of 2015.
Multi-platform releases with a PS4 have also incidentally helped sustain the Vita stream of software, even in the West. Through 2016 and 2017, games receive a Vita version more to appeal to Japan's larger Vita user base, and receive a PS4 version more to appeal to North America's larger user base.
The March 2017 launch of the Nintendo Switch, which operates on a similar concept of providing high-budget video games on a portable unit, further overshadowed the Vita. Though niche support through indie games and JRPGs continued into the year.
In mid-2017, Glixel estimated the Vita user base to be around 15 million. On September 20, 2018, Sony announced at Tokyo Game Show 2018 that the Vita would be discontinued in 2019, ending its hardware production.
Production of new physical Vita games in Europe and America ceased by the end of Sony's 2018 fiscal year, which ended on March 31, 2019.
At the time of the announcement, US Gamer estimated that the Vita user base had grown to approximately 16 million units.
Production of Vita hardware officially ended on March 1, 2019.
In March 2021, Sony announced that the Vita's online storefront would be closing on August 27, 2021, making it impossible to purchase digital games for the platform. Though still allowing for the download of previously purchased games, this decision was later reversed following consumer backlash. In line with Sony's ambition to combine aspects of traditional video game consoles with mobile devices like smartphones and tablets, the Vita contains a multitude of input methods.
The device features a super oval shape similar to the design of the original PlayStation Portable, with a 5-inch, 130mm QHD OLED capacitive touchscreen in the center of the device.
The device features 2 analog sticks, a D-pad, a set of standard PlayStation face buttons, triangle, circle, cross and square, 2 shoulder buttons, L and R, a PlayStation button and start and select buttons.
Motion control is also possible through Sony's 6-axis motion sensing system, consisting of a 3-axis gyroscope and a 3-axis accelerometer.
In addition to these input methods, specific to just the Vita is a secondary touchpad that is on the back of the device. Other hardware includes stereo speakers, a microphone, built-in Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth 2.1 plus EDR connectivity, and 2 cameras.
The cameras are both 0.3 megapixel and run at 640 by 480 VGA at 60 frames per second, or 64 at 320 by 240 at 120 frames per second.
They can be used to take photos or videos using built-in applications on the system.
The two cameras feature the abilities of face detection, head detection, and head tracking.
The platform also launched with a model with 3G mobile data support, which required a separate data plan through a data provider.
The 3G service has been partnered with NTT Docomo in Japan, AT&T in the US, Rogers in Canada, and Vodafone in Europe and Australia.
The 3G model was discontinued in 2013 and not made available in the system's future revised models. Internally, the device features a custom system on chip with a quad-core ARM Cortex-A9 MP core processor and a quad-core GPU SGX 543 MP4 Plus.
Sony has stated that the Vita generally runs well under its full clock speed, but due to overheating and battery consumption issues that would ensue, Sony placed its processing power around halfway between the current PSP and the PS3.
The Vita's internal battery has between 3 to 5 hours of power for game playing, depending on the processing power required for the game, screen brightness, sound level, and network connections, as well as other factors.
Additionally, the battery can supply about 5 hours for video watching and up to 9 hours of music listening with the screen off.
The system does allow for additional external battery solutions as well.
The PlayStation Vita has 512 megabytes of system RAM and 128 megabytes of VRAM.
The amount of RAM allows cross-game chat to be used on the system. Software for the PlayStation Vita is distributed on a proprietary flash memory card called PlayStation Vita Game Card, rather than on Universal Media Discs, UMDs, as used by the PlayStation Portable.
The shape and size of the card itself is very similar to an SD card.
5 to 10% of the game card space is reserved for game save data and patches.
The PS Vita is incompatible with standard memory cards, such as SD cards, and instead stores data on proprietary PS Vita memory cards, which are available in sizes of 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, and 64 gigabytes.
Whoa!
Initially, a maximum of 100 applications and games can be stored on the device at a time, regardless of data storage available.
When the limit is reached, applications or games must be moved or deleted in order to access those beyond the limit.
This limit was later raised to 500 applications in System Software version 3.10, released in 2014.
Due to the high price of official Sony memory cards, inexpensive third-party SD2 Vita adapter cards which allow the use of commodity micro SD storage media in conjunction with a modified console appeared on the market.
All games developed for the PlayStation 4, with the exception of games requiring the use of special peripherals such as PlayStation Camera, are playable on the Vita through remote play.
With the use of a Vita, PS4, and PS4 game, this allows a PS4 game to be run on the PS4, but its output transmitted to the Vita, with the Vita being used for the controller input, and the image and sound being transmitted to the Vita screen and speakers instead of the television.
The result is similar to what a Wii U console does with its gamepad controller through off-TV play.
The the Vita technically has remote play functionality with a PlayStation 3 as well, though very few PS3 games supported the feature due to limitations with a less powerful PS3 hardware.
More PS3 games are available for streaming on the Vita through Sony's cloud gaming service PlayStation Now, though they are streamed over the internet in the form of cloud computing rather than directly from a physical PS3 console.
First implemented in 2014, the service was announced to be discontinued on the Vita on August 15, 2017.
A revised model of the Vita was released in Japan on October 10, 2015, in Europe on February 7, 2014, and in North America on May 6, 2014.
The revised model, officially called the PCH 2000 series and commonly referred to as the PS Vita Slim, is 20% thinner and 15% lighter compared to the original model.
While it largely maintains the original's overall structure and layout, the original's OLED screen has been replaced with a lower-cost LCD.
The model also roughly added about an extra hour of battery life.
The newer model also comes with 1 GB of internal storage memory, although it is not possible to use both the internal memory and memory card concurrently.
Upon inserting a PS Vita memory card, the system will offer to copy the existing data from the internal memory to the new card.
This model has a micro USB Type-B port, which can be used to charge the device along with any standard micro USB cable.
The model was released in 6 colors in Japan: white, black, light blue, lime green, pink, and khaki, although it was only released in black and light blue in North America and Europe.
The PlayStation TV is a non-portable variant of the Vita. Instead of featuring its own display screen, it connects to a television via HDMI like a traditional home video game console, and is controlled through the use of a DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 controller.
Due to the difference in controller input between the Vita and the DualShock controller, Vita games that are dependent on the system's touchscreen, rear touchpad, microphone, or camera are not compatible.
It also shares the Remote Play and PS Now functionality of a regular Vita.
The system was released in Japan in November 2013, in North America in October 2014, and in Europe on November 14, 2014.
The device did not fare well and had a short retail shelf life in North America and Europe, where it was discontinued at the end of 2015. Physical software for the Vita is distributed on a proprietary flash memory card called PlayStation Vita Game Card.
All Vita games are also made available to be downloaded digitally on the PlayStation Network via the PlayStation Store, although not all games are released physically.
Since its launch, digital-only releases have slowly become more prominent, partially in an effort to reduce production costs for release on the platform's comparatively smaller user base, and partially due to the influx smaller scale and mobile phone games that have always been digital-only releases.
Like the PS3 and PS4, the Vita contains trophy support for games.
The system was designed so that it would be easy for developers to extract PS3 game assets and in turn use them to make Vita versions of games.
Prior to the Vita's release, several third-party studios showcased tech demos of the device by exporting existing assets from their PlayStation 3 counterpart and then rendering them on the device. High-budget examples including Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, Yakuza 4, and Lost Planet.
While none of these particular high-budget tech demos materialized into actual game releases, and few big-budget Western games would be made for both outside of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Many Japanese development teams would go on to develop mid-level games that would release for both platforms, including the first two games from Falcom's Trails of Cold Steel series, Compile Heart's original HyperDimension-NWNE trilogy, and many entries from Tecmo Koei's Atelier and Dynasty Warriors series.
The trend continued on the PS4 as well, with Vita/PS4 releases becoming common due to the spread of their user bases. Vita versions for Japan, where the Vita was larger in its initial years, and PS4 versions of games for North America and Europe, where the PS4 user base was substantially larger.
Few PlayStation 2 titles were ported to the Vita due to the PS2's complicated architecture. Games that did, such as Final Fantasy X-2 Remaster and Persona 4 Golden, required extensive reworking, or were based on their PS3 counterparts, such as Yak and Daxter Collection, Ratchet and Clank Collection, and Sly Cooper Collection.
Towards the end of its lifespan, Vita versions of games began to be cancelled in favor of PS4 or Nintendo Switch releases.
The device is backward compatible with most PSP games. However, its lack of a UMD disk drive limits this capability to those titles which have been digitally released on the PlayStation Network via the PlayStation Store, but not physical PSP games or films.
The Vita is also backward compatible with a majority of the PS1 classics, the group of PlayStation 1 games Sony has made available digitally for download. And PlayStation NES small-budget downloadable titles originally created for the PSP and PS3.
Games from Sony's PlayStation Mobile initiative had initially been compatible but were removed when the service was shut down in September 2015.
In Japan, select downloadable PC Engine and Pocket Station titles became backward compatible as well.
A number of applications are available to run on the Vita, some initially preloaded on the device, while others are available via Sony's PlayStation Store.
Reloaded apps include a web browser, a content manager app for monitoring data saved to the device, an email client, a music app, a photo app, and a video player.
The system's web browser supports HTML5, cookies, and JavaScript, but not Adobe Flash.
Also included was Near, a social media/GPS-like app that allowed the user to see other Vita players in the area and what games or applications they had been using, with the opportunity for some limited interactivity and communication, although most of its functionality was disabled in 2015.
A number of other third-party apps commonly found on mobile devices have also been made available on the Vita. Crunchyroll, Facebook, removed in 2015. Flick, broken. Google Maps, removed in 2015. Hulu. LiveTweet, Sony's third-party client for Twitter. MLB.TV, broken. Netflix, Redbox Instant, discontinued. Skype, removed in 2016. TuneIn, broken. Twitch, Weather Nation, and YouTube, removed in 2015.
Facebook, Flick, Google Maps, Twitter, and YouTube no longer function as Vita apps, but continue to be available by using the Vita's web browser.
Unlike the PSP and PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Vita does not use the cross-media bar interface.
Instead, it uses a touchscreen-based UI, dubbed Liveria, which includes various social networking features via the PlayStation Network.
Each game or application is represented by its own circle icon, and selecting it leads the user to a panel with multiple options present, including running software itself, going to its respective website through the internet, seeing if there are downloadable updates available for the software, and seeing a newsfeed-like list of activities related to it, such as installing it or obtaining trophies for both the user and others the user has interacted with recently. According to review aggregator Metacritic, the Vita's original hardware release was generally well received with critics, although a few concerns persisted as well.
Metacritic editor Jason Dietz noted that reviewers tended to praise the Vita's actual hardware design and operating system, but expressed some concern on its practicality, namely competing in 2012 onward with a large size and price where mobile phones with large screens and cheap games were prevalent as an alternative.
As of its initial Western launch in February 2012, out of 44 professional critic reviews, 9 fell in the great rating, 29 in the good rating, 6 in the mixed rating, and 0 in the bad or awful rating. Its initial launch sales were generally seen as positive, selling over 300,000 units in Japan and 200,000 units in North America.
However, a large drop-off occurred in both regions.
In Japan, second-week sales dropped 78% and leveled off at selling about 12,000 units per week.
Similarly, sales dropped off to about 30,000 to 50,000 units sold per month for the year after launch in North America.
Overall, Sony fell far short of the worldwide sales targets of 10 million Vitas sold by the end of March 2013.
The device sold 1.2 million units as of the end of February 2012, 4 million by the end of 2012, and were only estimated by analysts to have reached 6 million by the end of 2013. Figures that have not been confirmed due to Sony's ceasing to release Vita sales figures after hitting the 4 million mark at the end of 2012.
Views on the hardware dropped to more moderate levels in 2015 after the platform's initial sales lulls.
Surveys in Japan showed that consumers were not purchasing the device due to its high retail price and perceived lack of software variety, and that current Vita owners only showed a 46% rate of approval for the device and its software library.
Similarly, many Western critics felt that the low sales through 2015 would lead to an early death for the product. From 2013 onward, Sony was able to reverse the trajectory of the system by changing focus, aiming to be more of a niche product than one with mass market appeal, focusing more on small Western mobile phone games and mid-level Japanese-developed games, and attaching it to the rise and popularity of its PlayStation 4 platform with its remote play connectivity functions.
Sony also released the Vita model revision, the TCH-2000, which was generally well received by critics as well for addressing a number of prior complaints about the system, which included a price and size reduction.
However, reviewers felt more mixed on the decision to change from OLED to LCD screen in the revised model, with some feeling it led to a minor downgrade in image quality. While not giving specific figures, Sony stated that Vita sales beat projections in North America in 2014, which it was happy and surprised with, sometimes even falling out of stock.
Similar response was found in the UK as well.
The platform has been considered to have sold well in Japan, where it outsold the PS4 in 2015 and reached 5 million units sold in 2016 according to sales tracker Media Create.
It also obtained million-selling software in the same year with a Japanese Vita release of Minecraft.
By the end of 2015, research firm EDAR estimated the sales of the Vita worldwide to be around 10 million.
Despite the smaller user base, the platform continued to be viable for game releases into 2017 due to the high attach rate of software sold per hardware user.
Limited run games and various indie game developers praised the platform for its wide selection of more original and niche video games and the strong respective sales of them.
In mid-2017, Glixel estimated that approximately 15 million units of the system had been sold, while by September 2018, US Gamer estimated it had grown to about 16 million units.
In a 2021 retrospective by The Verge, Sony employees attributed several factors to the Vita's poor sales, in contrast to the PSP, which had an estimated 80 million sales in its lifetime. A similar drop had been seen by Nintendo with its transition from the Nintendo DS to the Nintendo 3DS.
Christian Phillips, a former senior director in Sony, said they had underestimated the impact of mobile gaming at the time of the Vita's release.
They had considered gaming on smartphones to be just good enough for gameplay and instead felt tablet computers to be more their competitors to the Vita, according to Phillips.
While some technologists in Sony had cautioned that mobile device computational power could outpace current consoles around 2010 to 2011, the design of the Vita did not incorporate this caution.
Thus, the Vita was released at the same time that mobile gaming was greatly expanding, losing potential consumers to that market. John Kohler, the former vice president of marketing at Sony, also believed that the Vita had been released too late into the main PlayStation console cycle and too close to the PlayStation 4's release in November 2015.
As one of Sony's flagship products, many of their first-party developers had put more focus on games for that system rather than the Vita as a result.
The lack of interest from Sony's first-party teams reverberated to third-party developers who felt the Vita was not worth the effort to develop for over the upcoming PlayStation 4, leaving the Vita without a strong software library.
Kohler believed that if the Vita had launched earlier into the PlayStation 3's life cycle, they would have been able to capture more interest from developers during that time and build out a more compelling library for the Vita.
The Vita was considered a commercial failure for Sony.
In 2018, Sony announced there would be no successor to the Vita/PSP line of handhelds.
With the success of the Nintendo Switch and Steam Deck handhelds moving into the 2020s, publications questioned Sony's decision to abandon the market.
In 2023, Sony announced Project Q, a controller with an 8-inch screen for the PlayStation 5 that would replicate the experience of remote play on a Vita or off-TV play of the Wii U gamepad.
The product was later named PlayStation Portal and was released on November 15, 2023. In early 2023, Sony announced the development of a new portable system, originally announced under the codename Project Q, that can stream PS5 games from a home console, and on August 23, 2023, it was officially unveiled as PlayStation Portal.
It released on November 15, 2023 for $199.99.
The PlayStation Portal is a handheld gaming accessory for the PlayStation 5, developed by Sony Interactive Entertainment, first released on November 15, 2023.
It is used to stream video games and other media from a PlayStation 5 via the Portal's Wi-Fi connection using remote play technology.
The Portal is able to control the console using its own built-in screen and DualSense-like controller style like a handheld game console, although it does not run any games or media natively on its own. The PlayStation Portal's main hardware features include an 8-inch LCD HD screen and all of the buttons and features of a DualSense controller.
It runs a heavily modified version of Android 13 on a Snapdragon 662 system on chip.
Unlike the Nintendo Switch or Sony's own previous PlayStation Vita and PlayStation Portable, the PlayStation Portal is not a standalone game console and only functions as a streaming receiver for PlayStation 5.
In November 2024, Sony rolled out test versions of the device's software to give cloud gaming access to players with PlayStation Plus Premium, which exited beta and became officially available in November 2025.
The PlayStation Portal connects to a paired PlayStation 5 through a local area network instead of directly using the Portal's Wi-Fi connection.
The controller commands and video stream are transmitted over the local network, which means that a broadband internet connection is not required at home other than for authentication purposes or to play online multiplayer games.
When outdoors or remote, an internet connection is required. The Portal itself does not feature 4G/5G cellular connectivity, instead connecting to a Wi-Fi access point elsewhere, which may also include tethering to an existing cell phone's connection. Due to the lack of a web browser, the PlayStation Portal was initially unable to connect to most public Wi-Fi hotspots, which require access to a captive portal for authentication.
A system software update rolled out on June 19, 2024, allowing users to connect to these public networks.
This was initially limited to the 2.4 GHz radio band, but another firmware update released in July added support for 5 GHz public Wi-Fi networks. Publications have noted that the quality of the stream, both locally and remote, is highly dependent on the home router and generally recommend a PlayStation 5 to be hardwired to the router using Ethernet instead of wirelessly. The PlayStation Portal was developed under the codename Project Q.
Rumors of the device began circulating in early 2023, with reports describing a handheld device focused solely on remote play, codenamed Q-Lite.
Whoa!
The device was officially announced during the PlayStation Showcase on May 23, 2023, where it was presented as a dedicated accessory for the PlayStation 5 rather than a standalone console successor to the PlayStation Vita. On August 23, 2023, Sony officially revealed the final name as the PlayStation Portal, along with its pricing and release window. The PlayStation Portal received mixed to positive reviews from critics.
Reviewers generally praised the device's build quality, screen, and ergonomic integration of the DualSense controller features, but criticized its reliance on network stability and lack of Bluetooth support.
Seth G. Macy IGN awarded the device an 8 out of 10, calling it the best PlayStation 5 remote play solution available.
He highlighted the 8-inch LCD screen as bright and vibrant, and praised the retention of the DualSense's haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, noting that the experience felt significantly more authentic than using a smartphone with a clem controller.
Whoa!
Screen Rant similarly praised the hardware, describing it as an incredible piece of hardware that slots perfectly into something I didn't know I wanted. However, the device's strict requirement for a strong Wi-Fi connection was a frequent point of contention.
The Verge noted that the user experience lives and dies by your Wi-Fi, with performance suffering noticeably on unstable networks.
Michael Higgum of GameSpot was more critical, stating the device just isn't good enough due to inconsistent connection quality and image compression, even on decent home networks. Engadget described the Portal as baffling and questioned the $199 price point for a device that cannot play games locally.
The review also criticized the omission of Bluetooth support, which forces users to use wired headphones or purchase proprietary PlayStation-linked audio accessories.
The device was frequently referred to in the media as the Dad Station, a nickname reflecting its niche but effective appeal to parents and users in shared living spaces who cannot always commandeer the main television. Following its announcement, there was a degree of doubt about the potential of the device.
However, the PlayStation Portal has reportedly been a sales success, becoming the best-selling PS5 accessory in the United States in 2024.
11 months on from its US launch, an estimated minimum of 420,000 units have been sold in the country. In 2024, data from Circana indicated that the PlayStation Portal was the best-selling accessory in dollar sales for the year in the US market.
By late 2024, industry analysts estimated that roughly 3% of PlayStation 5 owners had purchased the device.
In 2024, security researcher Andy TheChaoticWolf announced he was able to hack the PlayStation Portal and run PlayStation Portable games on it through the PSP emulator. Posting a picture of the Portal running the PSP release of Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories. We will continue more about PlayStation in Part 9.